Alright, so I put the wheel well on, and all those little tabs, each one of them has to be glued and then pushed down. So I did most of them and then just left those last few to show you, but they all are the same thing. So I put them in there, and I got that space right there, which stinks, but that's life. Can't fit it any different. So the other side actually, like I said, fitted better, but that's okay. So this is the way this whole thing went. Put a little glue around the tabs, and then just press it together and make it line up as best you can. Like I said, I got that corner that isn't lined up, but the rest of it looks okay. It looks even compared to the other side. And see, I use those tweezers to squeeze along the outside. See, it goes on, squeezes in the tab and squeezes the other end. I work my way all the way around. You can use your fingers too, but various things. There I'm using the back of my tweezers. And there it is. So here's the other one, and you can see it looks really good. And then there's this one, looks kind of crummy. My son agrees. So, be that as it may, that part right there on that rib, this piece right there on the wheel well will glue right up next to it. So when I put that together, and there's that ever-loving gap there in the middle, but this will just fold around, and you can see you end up with a skinned wing, and the wheel wells basically where they're supposed to be. Certainly it will look really nice when it's done. So everything looks good, even, the trailing edge matches. There's a nice turn or curve right around that little rib. So everything's pretty good. And the wing root doesn't have to be exact because there are going to be fillets on there later. That gap, like I said, we're going to have to work with that later. And anyway, so had to make the top curve a little bit, and then I'm putting some glue on the relevant areas to get this thing started. And again, just put a little bit of glue down, and then I slid that wheel well up to where it should go and matched everything up. So it's butted up to the inside of that rib right now. And make sure those are even and those are even, and then I got it pretty good. And now it's just a matter of pushing it and squashing it and making sure the glue starts to dry along those spars. And then once that was on and dried a little bit, it doesn't take long, again, with this glue, so this isn't like an hour-long process. As you glue it and dry it, you can pretty much go to the next part. Put a little glue on the trailing edge. I made sure I took a little bit of that off with my fingers, by the way. Fold this over, make sure it attaches the way you want it to. I'm trying to get it to go up against that wing root a little bit, and in the end it doesn't match perfectly, but that's going to be all right. Get it down, make sure the trailing edge matches, and just start doing the same old thing. Get it where you need to put it, and then start squashing the paper down onto the spar, and then make sure the trailing edge is good, making sure the wing root looks okay, and there you are. Ignoring that huge gap, which we'll be able to fix. Everything looks even, looks good, and I don't think it looks too bad. So that last part has to go out there, and I'm curving everything, like the wingtip has to be curled in and down a little bit like that in order to make them curve and fit correctly. You'll be able to see I have a little problem there later. But that just, again, fits right up onto the tab, and then you just turn it over and make sure it looks good on the other side. This is all just test fitting, which seems redundant, but it's important. There's the bottom that's going to match up pretty well. So once I'm convinced that it's going to fit, then I can start to add glue. And again, I start by gluing just sort of the tab and maybe the top spars and the top tip rib. Put that on, slide that on like that, make sure it dries, and then I'll go around to the bottom. So I don't try to put it on all at once, because I think you might run into trouble. Biggest thing here is I'm trying to line up the trailing edge, but I'm trying to line up my panel lines. And they actually lined up pretty dang well, as I recall. So that dried, and now it's easy to go under here and put a little glue along the tabs again and along the relevant spars and trailing edges, and squish it right down. And any excess glue you can just squeegee away with your finger. And you just start making sure that it is attached and looks good. Make sure the trailing edge is good. Make sure your edges are good. It's just a matter of playing around with it. It doesn't take long. This model, for some reason, oh, and then you can use the bottom of a flat surface to kind of push down on it too. The tips are hard. The tips, they're designed well, but I think I'm probably off a little bit. And so when I put my tips together, I end up having a nice gap there where that split is. That split is necessary in order to make this thing do what it's supposed to do. So what I'm trying to do here is curve these pieces. So I'm trying to curve it so that it makes a nice convex surface. And I got it pretty good. Put a little glue in there, match up the edges, tweak them shut with your fingers and tweezers. Make sure they're close. It takes a little while. The paper, even if you have it pre-formed, it doesn't automatically go together. You gotta get started. Anything that doesn't show up isn't quite perfect, you can adjust it later. You can sand things back or touch it up with paint. Like this part, I put it together. I could not get that gap closed no matter what I did, but the end looks okay. And I could not get that edge, that white edge back there, to go away. So I just said, okay, it looks straight, it looks good, I'm just going to go ahead and put it together and then deal with it later. There I had a little piece on the leading edge that wasn't glued, so I put some glue in there, force it in place with a little finger, and then close it with the tweezers. That piece is going to be puttied, but that's a bummer. That's my ineptness. That piece I just decided to cheat, pull it down on the table, and just very carefully cut it away. And there's no white showing now. Ha ha. No one will know. Except for the 85 people who watch this movie. And then I can sand the edges back. And again, I'm going to be, getting this thing all puttied and things and sanded and changed. But even so, if this was just leaving it like it is, it doesn't look bad. It's even. Making sure everything, again, is touching and the glue is actually gluing and drying. So that doesn't look so bad. I mean, there's the whole wing together. And again, straight and true. Those front leading edge pieces are going to go in probably next. Not perfect, but not horrible. So now, you slide this thing up underneath the air scoop, and then you put your spars in like we practiced before. Make sure they're even. Make sure they line up in the middle. And you just test fit in here, making sure things are good. Again, I'm ignoring my big gap in the middle. We'll fix that later, because the overall impression is it looks like a Dornier arrow when we're done here. Making sure everything's good. If it is, then you can go ahead and commit to glue. And I have spaces here. See, those are supposed to be up against the fuselage, those parts, the lower fillets. And that means that gap should have been closed. So whatever I did wrong, I think it had to do with using the balsa. But those openings don't matter, because there's a fillet, and the fillet, I'll show you how those go on, and that will hide all that. And then there'll be these two pieces that go on at the end. But look at that, not bad. So, well test fitted. In this case, I made the main spars, put them on with super glue, put some super glue on the spars along there, and then put some super glue up into where they're going to attach to the fuselage. Then I put some good old tacky glue on those parts on the paper, because those parts are going to be pushed up against to a paper binding joint. So again, test fitted it. I know it works. Make sure it lines up, and then I start pushing those pieces so my tacky glue is starting already to come in contact with the paper. And then you take your time and you make sure that it's straight, and you make sure that your fuselage is vertical. Fits very well. I touched the places that were super glued with a little accelerator, and I'm just making sure that these pieces are all down. And again, all that ugliness is going to go away. We're gonna fix that. So I'm not that panicky about it. But you can see, there she is. Man, it's big, but it's kind of an impressive model. I do like how it looks. It's kind of hard to not want to play with it and run around and make airplane noises. But it's a big beast, and there it is. So stay tuned for more.